Cytherian High Command celebrated Earth's death with ceremonial wine pressed from the graves of a dozen conquered worlds. Admiral Velter raised his crystalline chalice, its contents glowing like liquid starfire, while holographic displays showed the empty crater where humanity's homeworld once spun in its ancient orbit. "The humans are extinct," he announced to the assembled fleet commanders. "Their pathetic species has been cleansed from the galaxy." 3 months had passed since the Cytherian Empire's flagship, the World Render, had cracked Earth's crust with tectonic resonance bombs. The planet had shattered like glass, its fragments spinning into the solar wind while 8 billion human voices fell silent forever. Or so they believed. Captain Darius Corvin of the UES Retribution watched the celebration through stolen surveillance feeds, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. Around him, the bridge crew of humanity's last dreadnought maintained perfect silence, their faces masks of controlled fury, hidden in the void between dimensions. Shielded by technology the Cytherians couldn't comprehend, Earth survivors planned their revenge. Sensors show 14 Cytherian battle groups across the former Sol system, reported Lieutenant Nix Calvera, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. They're strip mining Mars for rare metals, Saturn's rings, there, using Saturn's rings as construction material for their orbital platforms. Corvin's hands trembled as he gripped the command chair's armrests. The Retribution was just one of 47 ships that had escaped Earth's destruction, carrying the remnants of humanity, less than 2 million souls fleeing into the cosmic dark. For 3 months, they'd hidden in parallel space, licking their wounds while the universe forgot they ever existed. Status report from the fleet, Corvin commanded. "All vessels ready," came the response from Commander Hale Vasquez aboard the used Vindication. "The Prometheus protocol installations are online. Every ship, every weapon, every last bullet has been blessed by the blood of our dead." The Prometheus protocol, humanity's final gambit, born from desperation and refined by hatred, while fleeing Earth's destruction. Human scientists had made a breakthrough that would have horrified them in peacetime. They'd learned to weaponize quantum entanglement itself, turning their ships into living nightmares that existed partially outside reality. The cost was terrible. Each vessel required the life force of volunteers to power its systems, turning brave souls into vengeful ghosts that screamed through the ship's neural networks. "Sir," whispered Ensign Kira Roth, the youngest member of their crew at barely 19. She'd watched her parents die in New Tokyo when the World Render's assault began. "The quantum resonance chambers are detecting something. Multiple hyperspace signatures approaching the Sol system's edge." Corvin's blood ran cold. "Clarify. It's a Cytherian armada, sir. 200 ships minimum. They're coming to finish the salvage operation." The bridge fell silent except for the ghostly whispers of the dead crewmen who powered their systems. Through the neural link, Corvin could feel their rage bleeding into his consciousness, the accumulated fury of every human soul who died screaming as their world burned. "Signal the fleet," Corvin ordered, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. "Tell them it's time. Today, the galaxy learns what happens when you kill humanity's children." The Retribution's hull began to glow with otherworldly light as dimensional barriers thinned around them. Across the void, 46 other ghost ships prepared to emerge from the spaces between reality, their crews half living, half dead, and completely consumed by vengeance. The Cytherians had made one fatal error in their genocide. They'd assumed that death would stop humanity's wrath. They were about to learn why human legends spoke of ghosts that never rested until justice was served. In the depths of parallel space, humanity's final fleet prepared to make the galaxy bleed. The first Cytherian patrol never saw death coming. Captain Corvin watched through the Retribution's quantum phase viewports as the enemy destroyer Shard of Victory drifted through Earth's debris field, its crystalline hull refracting light from the distant sun. The Cytherian crew was harvesting fragments of human bone and metal, probably for trophies to mount in their victory museums. Range 8,000 kilometers, reported Lieutenant Calvera. "They're completely unaware of our presence." "Good." Corvin's voice carried the hollow echo that had infected all their speech since Bonnie with the ship's ghost crew. "Signal the Vindication and Fury's Edge. Coordinate Alpha, strike on my mark." The Retribution existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, a violation of physics so profound it made reality weep. When they'd first tested the Prometheus protocol, 3 volunteer crews had dissolved into quantum foam. before the scientists learned to stabilize the dimensional matrices with human consciousness itself, now powered by the souls of the dead. Humanity's ghost fleet could phase in and out of existence at will. Target acquired, announced Gunnery Chief Mason Pike, his voice mixing with the whispered curses of dead artillerymen. Quantum torpedoes loaded with crystalline disruptors. If we hit their power core, no. Corvin stood, his shadow seeming to split across multiple dimensions. We don't want a quick death. Load standard plasma charges. I want them to know they're dying. The Shard of Victory's crew consisted of 300 Cytherians, the same number of children, who died in the New Geneva school district when their orbital bombardment began. Corvin had memorized every casualty report, every name, every face. The dead demanded balance. Emerging from parallel space in 3, 2, mark. Reality shattered. The retribution materialized like a nightmare given form. Its black hole wreathed in dimensional fire. The Cytherian destroyer's sensors shrieked in alarm, but their weapons couldn't log onto a target that existed in 7 conflicting dimensions. Simultaneously, fire, Corvin commanded. The quantum-enhanced plasma barrage tore through the shard. A Victory's shields like they were made of tissue paper. Crystalline armor plates exploded in showers of brilliant fragments as the Retribution's guns spoke with the voices of the damned. But this wasn't the swift execution the Cytherians had given humanity. This was slow butchery. Their communications array is down, reported Calvera. Hull breaches on decks for through 7. They're trying to send a distress signal, but dead men tell no tales. Finished Commander Vasquez over the fleet comm. The Vindication and Fury's Edge emerged from the void like hunting wolves, their weapons adding to the symphony of destruction. The Shard of Victory tried to return fire, its crystalline beam cannons lancing out with enough power to vaporize a city block. The beams passed harmlessly through the Retribution's phased hull, striking empty space where the ship existed in normal reality. Dimensional displacement at 40%, Pike reported. We're mostly ghosts to them, Captain, inside the dying Cytherian ship. Admiral Velter's nephew, Commander Kethel, watched his crew die around him. Crystalline blood, the Cytherian's equivalent of ichor, splashed across the bridge as another human torpedo punched through their engineering section. How are they alive? Kethel screamed into his communicator. The humans are extinct. We watched their world die. His answer came in the form of boarding pods that phased through solid bulkheads. The Retribution had no need for conventional docking. Their Marines simply materialized inside enemy ships like vengeful spirits. DOS Sergeant Elena Voss led the first wave, her power armor inscribed with the names of everyone she'd lost. Behind her, 30 human soldiers moved with the fluid grace of the half-dead, their eyes glowing with quantum fire. The Prometheus protocol had changed them all, blurring the line between the living and the vengeful dead. The battle inside the Shard of Victory was swift and merciless. Cytherian security forces found their crystalline weapons useless against enemies who could phase between dimensions mid-combat. Voss put 3 plasma bolts through a Cytherian officer's chest, watched him fall, then phase-stepped to execute his backup crew before they could call for help. Bridge secured, Voss reported. 47 enemy casualties, 0 human losses. Commander Kethel found himself face-to-face with Captain Corvin, who had materialized on the bridge like a living shadow. The human's eyes burned with quantum fire, and his voice carried the whispers of a billion dead. You killed our children, Corvin said simply. Kethel tried to speak, tried to explain that this was war, that the Empire had only done what was necessary. Instead, he watched in horror as Corvin raised a hand that flickered between dimensions. The human's touch bypassed his crystalline exoskeleton entirely, reaching directly into his quantum matrix. Now you understand, Corvin whispered as Kethel's consciousness began to fray at the edges. What it feels like to watch your world die. The Shard of Victory exploded 17 minutes later, its debris joining the grave cloud that had once been Earth. But this time, the wreckage glowed with otherworldly fire, a beacon announcing humanity's return. In the depths of space, instruments across the Cytherian armada suddenly detected the impossible. Human life science approaching fast. Admiral Velter's triumph curdled to ash in his mandibles as the tactical display lit up with impossible readings. 7 more patrol ships had gone silent in the past hour, their death screams cut short mid-transmission. The last coherent message had been a panicked shriek. The humans live. They come as then nothing but quantum static. Status report, Velter commanded, his crystalline carapace clicking with nervous energy. The bridge of the world rendered the same ship that had cracked Earth like an egg buzzed with activity. As his officers tried to make sense of the impossible, Admiral, his tactical officer, Sub-Commander Rick Sand, gestured at the holographic display. With trembling claws, "We've lost 12 ships in the outer perimeter. No debris fields. No energy signatures. They simply vanish. Ghosts don't pilot starships," Velter snarled. But his conviction wavered. The humans had always been unpredictable. Their primitive minds capable of innovations that defied Cytherian understanding. Still, dead was dead. He'd watched their homeworld shatter personally. That certainty died when the first human vessel materialized inside his defensive formation. The UES Nemesis emerged from folded space. Like a dagger thrust from shadow, its hull wreathed in dimensional fire that made reality blur at the edges. Captain Yuki Tanaka had volunteered her crew for the most dangerous modification of the Prometheus protocol, complete phase shifting. That let her ship exist in multiple realities simultaneously. All batteries, fire, Velter roared. The world renders. Main guns unleashed enough energy to sterilize a continent. Crystalline lances of pure destruction converged on the Nemesis's position, only to pass through empty space. As the ship flickered between dimensions like a dying star, "Impossible," breathed Rick Sand. "They're moving through parallel space itself." Captain Tanaka's voice crackled over the communications array, somehow broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously for the children of New Tokyo, for the gardens of Europa, for every human soul you murdered while they slept. The Nemesis opened fire. Quantum torpedoes materialized inside Cytherian shields, detonating against hull plates that had never been designed to resist attacks from within. The world render's escort cruiser Dominion of Stars buckled as reality-warping charges tore through its crystalline matrix, unmaking the ship's molecular bonds at the quantum level. "Sir," Rick Sand's voice cracked, "the Dominion it's not just destroyed, it's being erased. The quantum signature shows. I don't care what the readings show." Velter's claws raked across his command console, leaving grooves in the crystalline surface. "Ready the fleet for dimensional bombardment. If these ghosts can phase between realities, we'll collapse every parallel space in this system." But the humans weren't finished with conventional tactics. The UES Lazarus materialized at point-blank range, its weapon ports already glowing with accumulated fury. Commander Alexei Petrov had loaded his ship's entire marine complement into modified boarding pods, each one containing a human volunteer enhanced by the Prometheus protocol, until they were more living weapon than soldier. "Boarding action," Petrov announced over fleet communications. "We're taking this bastard apart from the inside." The boarding pods didn't impact the world render's hull so much as phase through it, depositing their human cargo directly into the ship's vital systems. Sergeant First Class Ana Rodriguez materialized in the world render's primary weapon control center, her quantum-enhanced reflexes allowing her to gun down 3 Cytherian technicians. Before they realized she existed, "Control room secured," Rodriguez reported, her voice carrying the electronic distortion that marked all Prometheus-enhanced soldiers. "Beginning system shut down now." Throughout the massive dreadnought, similar scenes played out as human strike teams appeared in engineering sections, command centers, and weapon bays. The Cytherians found themselves fighting enemies who could step between dimensions mid-combat, whose weapons fired quantum-disrupted charges that tore through crystalline armor like hot knives. Through eyes, Admiral Velter watched his flagship die around him as human soldiers materialized on his bridge. The leader, a human female with captain's insignia and eyes that burned with dimensional fire, approached his command throne with the measured pace of an executioner. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez," she said, her voice carrying the whispered curses of the dead. "You murdered my daughter on Luna Colony. Her name was Isabel. She was 8 years old." Velter tried to speak, tried to activate his personal shields, tried to do anything but watch as this ghost woman raised a weapon that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. The quantum disruptor field didn't kill him quickly. Instead, it began unmaking his molecular structure one crystalline layer at a time. "Please," he gasped as his exoskeleton began to dissolve. "We were following orders." "The Empire demanded. The Empire will burn," Vasquez replied. "But first, you get to watch." Through the world render's viewports, Velter saw the impossible. Hundreds of human ships emerging from parallel space like demons crawling out of hell itself. The ghost fleet had come home, and they carried the fury of a murdered species in their hearts. The largest vessel, a massive dreadnought that seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once, bore markings he recognized with horror. UES Retribution, the flagship of humanity's final fleet. As consciousness faded, Admiral Velter realized the truth that would haunt the galaxy. Earth's children hadn't died when their world burned. They'd simply learned to weaponize death itself. The world render exploded in a cascade of quantum fire, its destruction serving as a beacon to every human ship in the void. The real war was just beginning. The Cytherian Hive Fleet's confidence evaporated like frost before a plasma torch. When humanity's true numbers became clear, what Admiral Velter had dismissed as impossible was now undeniable. 200 human warships materialized from the void between dimensions, their hulls blazing with quantum fire that made space itself weep. Deploy the reality anchors, shrieked Fleet Commander Zixeth from aboard his flagship. The Eternal Conquest. Lock down dimensional space, don't let them phase. The massive Cytherian battle station began deploying exotic weapons designed to stabilize local space-time, creating barriers that should have trapped the human ghost fleet in normal reality. Crystalline towers erupted from the station's hull, each one broadcasting reality warping fields that collapsed parallel dimensions. Within a 100,000-kilometer radius, Captain Corvin felt the change instantly as the Retribution's dimensional engine screamed in protest. Report, phase drives compromised, announced Chief Engineer Luna Blackthorn, her consciousness linked directly to the ship's quantum matrix through neural cables that pulsed with otherworldly light. They're collapsing parallel space around us. We're being forced back into normal reality. Good, Corvin replied, surprising his crew. Now they die like we died in the light. Where everyone can see, the tactical shift changed everything. Without dimensional phasing, humanity's ghost fleet was vulnerable to conventional weapons. Their quantum-enhanced hulls no longer able to sidestep incoming fire. But the Prometheus Protocol had given them something else. The accumulated fury of 8 billion murdered souls, focused through living weapons that existed to serve vengeance. The first conventional exchange lasted 11 minutes and left both fleets bloodied. The UES Vindication took a direct hit from a Cytherian siege cannon, the crystalline lance punching through her quantum-reinforced armor and vaporizing her forward weapon bays. Commander Vasquez watched 30 of his crew die in explosive decompression, their last words lost in the scream of escaping atmosphere. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, reported his tactical officer. Emergency bulkheads are sealed, but we've lost primary armament. That we rammed them, Vasquez snarled. The Prometheus Protocol had bonded his consciousness with the ship systems. He could feel the Vindication's pain like wounds in his own flesh, all powered to engines. Target. That crystal-spired bastard directly ahead. The Cytherian cruiser Shard of Eternity tried to evade, but the Vindication had been modified with quantum-enhanced thrust systems, powered by the life force of volunteer crewmen. The human dreadnought slammed into the crystalline vessel at 40% light speed, both ships vanishing in a burst of exotic radiation that lit up the void like a newborn star. Vindication is gone, reported Lieutenant Calvera, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. All hands lost. Acknowledged, Corvin replied. Signal the fleet conventional warfare authorized. Show them how humans fight when they can't run. What followed was butchery on a scale the galaxy hadn't witnessed since the Hegemony Wars. 1,000 years passed. The human ships, denied their dimensional advantages, fought with a savagery that stunned the Cytherian commanders. The UES Fury's edge, crippled by enemy fire, a leaking atmosphere from a dozen hull breaches, used her remaining missiles to blow the engines off a Cytherian battleship, then drifted close enough for her surviving crew to detonate their own reactor core. Why won't they surrender? Demanded Commander Zixeth as his tactical display showed another human ship, choosing mutual destruction over defeat. They're outnumbered for 2-1. His question was answered when the UES Lazarus, her hull cracked open like an egg, managed one final transmission before her core went critical. For Earth's children, remember us. The explosion took out 3 Cytherian escorts and crippled Zixeth's flagship, but humanity's losses were mounting. The Retribution's sister ship Nemesis died under concentrated fire from 6 Cytherian dreadnoughts, her quantum-enhanced armor failing under the sustained bombardment. Captain Tanaka's last order had been to eject her crew pods toward the enemy fleet, not for rescue, but to deliver boarding parties that would continue fighting even as their ship burned around them. Sir, Ensign Ross' voice was tight, with barely controlled panic. "We've lost 18 ships in the last hour. The fleet's quantum reserves are running low. The ghost crews are starting to fade." Corvin felt it to the whispered voices of the dead growing fainter as the Prometheus protocol consumed their essence. To power the ship's exotic systems, each quantum torpedo fired, each reality-warping maneuver performed, cost them the souls of the departed. Humanity's ghost fleet was burning through their own dead to stay functional. "Signal remaining ships," Corvin commanded. "Operation Lazarus full quantum burn." His officers went pale. Operation Lazarus meant releasing every constraint on the Prometheus protocol, allowing the ship's systems to consume not just the stored consciousness of the dead, but the life force of the living crew as well. It would give them unimaginable power for a brief time and guarantee their destruction. "Sir," whispered Calvera, "that's suicide." "No," Corvin replied, his eyes burning with quantum fire as he prepared to sacrifice his own soul for vengeance. "That's justice." Across the fleet, 37 surviving human ships began their final transformation. Hulls blazed with otherworldly light as the boundary between life and death dissolved entirely. The ghost crew's whispers became screams of fury that could be heard across the electromagnetic spectrum. The Cytherian reality anchors exploded as dimensional barriers collapsed. Under the strain of containing so much concentrated death, parallel space bled back into normal reality like water through a shattered dam. Humanity's final gambit had begun. The void between worlds became a charnel house of shattered metal and crystalline corpse dust as Operation Lazarus reached its terrible crescendo. 37 human ships burned with the light of dying stars, their crews willingly feeding their life force into quantum furnaces that transformed flesh and bone into pure vengeance. Captain Corvin felt his consciousness fragmenting as the retribution consumed his neural pathways to power her reality-warping weapons. Through the ship's sensors, he experienced the battle from 1,000 perspectives simultaneously. Every explosion, every death, every moment of agony stretched across multiple dimensions. "Quantum cascade at 90%, reported Chief Blackthorn, her voice growing hollow as the Prometheus protocol drained her life essence. "Hull integrity, marginal, sir. We're literally burning through our molecular structure to maintain this power level. Hold course," Corvin commanded, though speaking had become agony as his vocal cords crystallized from quantum exposure. "Target, the Eternal Conquest. Ram them if necessary." The Cytherian flagship tried to retreat, but the Ghost Fleet's final assault had torn holes in reality itself. Dimensional rifts opened like wounds in space-time, swallowing fleeing escort ships and spitting out their wreckage in parallel dimensions, where physics operated under different rules. Fleet Commander Zixith watched his formation disintegrate as human vessels launched suicide attacks that defied tactical comprehension. The UES Phantom materialized inside his defensive screen, her hull already cracking from quantum overload, and detonated her entire missile complement at point-blank range. The explosion vaporized the Cytherian battle cruisers and sent the Eternal Conquest spinning through the void. Her crystalline hull split open like a flowering chrysanthemum. "Damage report," Zixith shrieked, his crystalline carapace leaking ichor from stress fractures. "Primary weapons offline," his tactical officer replied, her voice distorted by the electromagnetic storm raging around them. "Shield generators destroyed." "Hull breaches on all decks, sir. We're dead in space." That's when the boarding pods arrived. The Used Revenant had sacrificed herself to deliver humanity's final ground assault. 200 Prometheus-enhanced Marines, whose life force had been quantum-linked to their weapons and armor. They didn't need airlocks or docking tubes. They simply materialized inside the Cytherian ships like living nightmares. Sergeant Elena Voss led the assault on the Eternal Conquest, her power armor inscribed with the names of every human child who died when Earth burned. Behind her, Marines, whose flesh was more quantum energy than biological matter, moved through bulkheads like ghosts, their weapons firing bursts of crystallized death. "Deck 7 secured," Voss reported, her voice carrying the electronic distortion that marked complete Prometheus integration. 63 enemy casualties. Moving to engineering, the battle inside the flagship was horrific. Cytherian security forces found their weapons useless against enemies who existed partially outside normal space-time. Captain Corvin's Marines could phase their limbs through solid armor to strike directly at enemy organs, could quantum tunnel their ammunition through shields, could literally step between dimensions to avoid incoming fire, but the cost was terrible. Voss watched her squad leader, Corporal Jamie Chen, dissolve into quantum foam as his enhanced body finally succumbed to Prometheus burnout. His last words were a whispered apology to parents who died 3 months ago on a world that no longer existed. Squad leaders, report, Voss commanded, her own cellular structure beginning to destabilize. Alpha Squad, gone, came the response from Sergeant Pike, his voice barely human anymore. Bravo Squad has 4 effectives. Charlie Squad, static. Then, Charlie Squad is down to 1. Proceeding to bridge. Meanwhile, in the void around them, the space battle reached its climax. The UES Retribution, her hull blazing with quantum fire that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, engaged 3 Cytherian dreadnoughts in a close-range slugging match that turned entire sectors of space into lethal radiation zones. Forward weapons destroyed, reported Lieutenant Calvera, her console sparking as quantum overload fried the ship's neural networks. Engines at 20%. Sir, we're falling apart. Captain Corvin no longer had enough organic brain matter left to respond vocally. Instead, he projected his thoughts directly through the ship's quantum matrix. Continue firing. All weapons, all power, die like humans. The Retribution's final broadside punched through the shields of the Cytherian dreadnought Conquest of Worlds, her quantum-enhanced missiles detonating inside the enemy ship's reactor core. The resulting explosion created a miniature black hole that lasted for exactly 3.7 seconds before collapsing into exotic matter. But the victory cost them everything. The Retribution's superstructure buckled as quantum forces tore her apart from within. Her crew, what remained of them, sang ancient human battle hymns as their bodies sublimated into pure energy across the battlefield. Similar scenes played out as humanity's ghost fleet burned through the last of their life force. The U's Wraith took 7 Cytherian cruisers with her when her dimensional core breached. The UES Banshee, her crew already dead, but her quantum-animated systems still functional, continued firing until her hull disintegrated entirely. In the end, 12 human ships remain operational. Of those, only 3 retained living crews. The rest were piloted by the quantum-imprinted consciousness of the dead. Ghost ships in the most literal sense possible. Fleet Commander Zixa found himself face-to-face with Sergeant Voss on his own bridge, his senior staff dead around him, their crystalline forms shattered by weapons that fired concentrated human rage. Your fleet is broken, Voss said, her voice carrying the whispers of 8 billion murdered souls. Your crews are dead. Your empire. She raised her quantum-enhanced sidearm, its barrel glowing with otherworldly fire. Your empire will learn to fear the dark between stars. The Eternal Conquest exploded exactly 17 minutes later, its destruction visible from the edge of the solar system. But by then, emergency beacons were already screaming across the galaxy, carrying word of the impossible. Humanity lived, and they had weaponized death itself. The Cytherian Empire's greatest fleet had been shattered by ghosts, and somewhere in the void, the survivors were already planning their next resurrection. The quantum storms had finally passed, leaving behind a graveyard of twisted metal and crystalline debris that stretched across what had once been humanity's cradle. Of the Cytherian armadas to 100 ships, only 37 remain operational. Of humanity's ghost fleet, exactly 3 vessels still showed life signs. The UES Retribution drifted through the void like a broken cathedral, her hull split open in 17 places, quantum fire bleeding from wounds that existed in multiple dimensions. Captain Corvin no longer possessed enough organic matter to be considered truly alive. His consciousness existed as pure quantum information, bound to his ship's neural matrix by nothing more than stubborn refusal to die. Status report. He managed. His thoughts transmitted through damaged systems that sparked with otherworldly energy. Where the last, whispered Lieutenant Calvera, her body more machine than flesh, after the Prometheus protocol had consumed her biological components to power their weapons. The Vengeance went dark 10 minutes ago. The Wrath lost her quantum core. It's just us and the void. Through sensors that saw in 17 dimensions, Corvin observed the survivors of both fleets. The Cytherian remnants had formed a defensive sphere around their flagship, the Eternal Dominion, sister ship to the destroyed Eternal Conquest. Their commander, Admiral Kurseth, had assumed overall command after Zixath's death, and her first order had been to charge their reality-warping weapons for one final strike. Sir, Calvera's voice carried growing alarm. They're powering up something massive. Energy signature suggests a dimensional implosion bomb. They're going to collapse this entire sector of space-time. Corvin's remaining consciousness. Processed. The tactical situation with the cold efficiency of a machine built for war. A dimensional implosion would destroy everything within a light-year radius, erasing the debris field that marked Earth's grave, eliminating the last traces of humanity's existence, and ensuring that their species would be forgotten by history. They would rather commit suicide than let us escape, he realized. Captain, came a new voice over the communication array. It was Sergeant Voss, somehow still alive aboard the crippled hulk of the Eternal Conquest. We've secured their quantum core. If you can get close enough, we can link our remaining ships together. Create a quantum resonance cascade. Corvin understood immediately. A resonance cascade would turn their 3 damaged vessels into a single quantum weapon. Capable of punching through dimensional barriers, they could escape to parallel space, carrying word of humanity's survival to colonies beyond the Kytherian Empire's reach, where they could do something else entirely. Sergeant. Corvin's thoughts carried the weight of command decisions that would echo across eternity. Can you access their fleet communications array? Already on it, sir. Broadcasting. On all frequencies. Good, Admiral Kurseth. Corvin's voice somehow reached every surviving Kytherian ship simultaneously. I know you can hear me. The response crackled with static and barely controlled fury. The human ghost speaks. You should have stayed dead. Captain, your species had its chance at glory and squandered it on primitive emotions. Perhaps, Corvin admitted, but we learned something your empire never understood. We learned that death isn't the end, it's just another weapon to be wielded. Through the quantum link, he felt Sergeant Voss initiating the cascade sequence. The remaining human ships began to glow with accumulated quantum energy, their damaged hulls becoming conduits for forces that existed beyond normal spacetime. You see, Admiral, you made one critical error when you destroyed our world. You assumed that humans fight for territory, for resources, for conquest. But you're wrong. We fight for our children and our children's children and their children after them. We fight for the memory of what we were and the promise of what we might become. The resonance cascade reached critical threshold. Reality began to warp around the human vessels as they prepared to translate into parallel space. Not to escape, but to carry their message to every human colony scattered across the galaxy. The dimensional implosion won't stop us, Corvin continued. It will just scatter our quantum signature across multiple realities. Every human settlement will know what happened here. They'll know that Earth died, and they'll know that we made you pay for it. Admiral Kurseth's response was a shriek of pure rage. Fire the implosion device. Erase them from existence. The Eternal Dominion's reality-warping weapon discharged, creating a sphere of collapsed spacetime that began devouring everything. Within its expanding radius, Kytherian ships vanished into nothingness as the implosion consumed their own fleet. Admiral Kurseth's flagship among the first to be erased from existence. But humanity's ghost ships were already translating between dimensions, their quantum-linked, hulls riding the implosion's event horizon like surfers on a cosmic wave. Translation successful, reported Voss. We're in parallel space. The cascade is stable. Good. Corvin replied. Signal all human colonies. Emergency burst transmission across all realities. Tell them Earth's children have come home as the dimensional implosion consumed the soul system entirely, erasing the last physical traces of humanity's birth world. 3 ghost ships emerged from the void between realities. They carried with them the quantum-encoded memories of 8 billion dead, the technological secrets of the Prometheus Protocol, and a message that would unite every human settlement in the galaxy under a single, terrible purpose. The Kytherian Empire had won their Pyrrhic victory. Earth was gone, erased from existence itself, but they had also created something far more dangerous than any single world. They had transformed humanity into something that could not be killed, could not be contained, and would never, ever forgive. In the parallel spaces between stars, the last 3 ships of Earth's fleet prepared to see the galaxy with humanity's final gift, the knowledge of how to weaponize death itself. The real war was about to begin. 5 years later, the Kytherian home system of Vexara burned. From the command deck of the UES Resurrection, humanity's first ship built entirely in parallel space, Admiral Elena Voss watched crystalline cities melt beneath quantum fire. Around her, the combined might of the human liberation fleet stretched across multiple dimensions. Over 3,000 ships crewed by the living, the dead, and those who existed somewhere between. Final resistance pockets eliminated, reported. Captain Drake Meridian from aboard the UES Nemesis Reborn. Their planetary shields are down. The surface is ours. Voss nodded, her quantum-enhanced senses monitoring the battle across 17 realities simultaneously. The past 5 years had transformed humanity from refugees into something the galaxy had never seen: a species that had weaponized extinction itself. The message the 3 surviving Earth ships had carried to the colonies had ignited a firestorm of rage that consumed the galaxy. Humanity's scattered settlements from the ice mines of Kepler 442b to the floating cities of Lee 667 CC had united under a single banner: Remember Earth. The Prometheus Protocol had spread like wildfire. Among the colonies, volunteers by the millions had offered their consciousness to power humanity's growing ghost fleet, their souls becoming ammunition in a war that transcended the boundaries between life and death. Each new ship built was christened with the quantum-encoded memories of Earth's final moments, ensuring that no human would ever forget what they were fighting for. Admiral, came the voice of Captain Corvinor, what remained of him. His consciousness had been uploaded into the Resurrection's quantum matrix, making him effectively immortal and absolutely dedicated to humanity's cause. The Catherian Emperor has agreed to our terms. Emperor Velthic the Eternal the same, ruler who had ordered Earth's destruction, knelt in the ruins of his crystal palace, his ornate carapace cracked and leaking ichor around him. The survivors of his once mighty empire watched as human soldiers materialized from parallel space, their weapons trained on the leaders who had thought genocide would be easy. State the terms again, Velthic croaked, his voice barely a whisper. Admiral Voss stepped forward, her form flickering between dimensions as the Prometheus Protocol coursed through her veins. Total surrender, complete disarmament, reparations, to be paid in the form of quantum manufacturing technology, and her voice hardened. You will build a monument to every human child who died when you cracked our world. 8,700,437,216 souls. Their names will be carved in crystalline matrices that will sing their memory across all dimensions. For 10,000 years, the Emperor's mandibles clicked in defeat, and if we refuse, Voss gestured to the viewports where the Ghost Fleet maintained its vigil. Then we demonstrate why humans call this the Prometheus Protocol. We'll burn your species to ash and scatter your consciousness across the void between stars. Your choice. The surrender ceremony was broadcast across every inhabited world in the galaxy. A message that would resonate for millennia. Earth's children had returned from death itself to claim their vengeance. 1 year later, the Memorial Garden of Soul floated in the exact coordinates where Earth had once spun around its yellow star, built from crystalline matrices that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It sang with the voices of the dead 8 billion souls, whose consciousness had been preserved in quantum amber, their memories eternal and their sacrifice unforgotten. Captain Sarah Chan of the colony ship New Horizons stood before the central monument with her daughter, Maya, who had been born in the void between stars during humanity's darkest hour. The child's eyes glowed with the faint quantum fire that marked all humans born after the Prometheus event, the next generation, forever changed by their species' brush with extinction. Tell me the story again, Mama, Maya whispered, her small hand pressed against the warm crystal that contained her grandmother's memories. Long ago, Chen began, her voice carrying the ritual cadence of humanity's new founding myth. There was a blue world where children played beneath yellow sunshine. Evil beings came from the dark between stars and broke that world into pieces, thinking they had killed all the children who lived there. But they didn't, Maya chimed in, having heard the story 1,000 times. No, little star, they didn't, because some of the children had learned to travel between worlds. And when they saw their home burning, they became something new, something that could not be killed, could not be stopped, and would never forget. Around them, other human families performed the same ritual, the same remembrance. The Prometheus Protocol had changed more than just their technology. It had fundamentally altered what it meant to be human. Death was no longer final. The barrier between life and extinction had become permeable, allowing consciousness to persist beyond biological failure. And now, Maya asked, now we build new worlds. Chen replied, we explore new stars. We carry the memory of Earth in our hearts and the voices of the dead in our souls. We are humanity, and we are eternal. High above the memorial, the UES Retribution maintained her eternal vigil, Captain Corvin's consciousness, now distributed across the ship's quantum matrix, monitored the galaxy for threats while simultaneously composing symphonies. From the whispered voices of 8 billion ghosts, the Catharian Empire had fallen. Other species that had once viewed humans as primitive had learned to treat them with the respect reserved for forces of nature across the galaxy. The phrase "Remember Earth" had become synonymous with the concept of inevitable vengeance, but perhaps more importantly, humanity had learned something about itself in the crucible of extinction. They had discovered that their greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons, it was their absolute refusal to let the universe have the final word. Earth was gone, its atoms scattered across the cosmic void, but Earth's children had transcended the need for a single world. They carried their home with them now, written in quantum fire across multiple realities. Eternal and unbreakable. In the memorial garden, the crystalline matrices sang their endless song, the voices of the dead mixing with the laughter of children yet to be born, a harmony that would echo across time itself until the last star burned cold. The galaxy had tried to kill humanity's future. Instead, it had given them forever. They thought Earth lost, but they had only taught her children how to make death itself their weapon.